Okay, welcome to the Daniel S. Loeb Torah Center morning class. A lot to discuss. A quick baracha. If you're here, you can answer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam shakol niyeh bivaro. We are moving straight into two areas which mean so much to the Jewish people. Shabbat and Mishkan. Both come together, not just in terms of the Jewish people's observance, but so much of who we are as a people come not only from Shabbat, not only from the Mishkan, but of the meeting point between them. Now, what's fascinating about Shabbat is that we know that we have 39 malachot, 39 constructive actions that were performed in order to create and to assemble the Mishkan. That we know. So we learn how the laws of Shabbat from the Mishkan. And when you teach Hilchot Shabbat, that I actually go through once a year with all my students, you go through the 39 malachot, you're not really learning the laws of Shabbat, you're learning of what they did in the Mishkan, how they did it, when they did it, why they did it. All of this is so important in order to understand how to keep Shabbat. So Shabbat comes directly from the actions in the Mishkan, the connecting word that connects Shabbat. And the Mishkan, of course, is malacha. Malacha, a poor translation of the word malacha is work, but it's not work. Avodah is work. As in, avadim hayinu leparo b'Mitzrayim. That is what work is. Then what precisely is malacha? So we have to look through the rest of the Torah to see the word malacha appear, and it appears here in relation to the construction of the Mishkan. So malacha that we should refrain from on Shabbat is actually what? Creative actions, of which there are 39 in total. Throughout history and throughout the universe, there are 39 core malachot. All of them were used to build and create the Mishkan. What's weird is that the Torah does not tell us what those 39 malachot are. We're not told what the 39 malachot are. The Torah does give us one malacha. It's almost like a teaser. Well, where do we know the rest of the 38? And the answer is the Mishnah and the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat tells us what the 39 malachot are in total. But the Torah gives us one. Only one. That's why the Gemara says the laws of Shabbat are mountains hanging off small threads. That's how we learn. All of the laws of Shabbat are like hanging off small threads that we get from the from the Mishnah and the Gemara. What is the one malacha that is mentioned in the Torah when it comes to not breaking Shabbat? And it appears at the beginning of the parasha. It says, Lo ta'avur ru'esh, do not make a fire, b'chol moshvatechem, in all of your dwellings, b'yom HaShabbat. Really? That's it? That's the only malacha we're given in the Torah itself? Okay, it mentions someone who starts to collect wood, mekoshe etzim, but that's a story about him, and he did transgress Shabbat. But it doesn't give it to us as a general rule. That is one of the malachot of Shabbat. But it's not given to us as a halacha. Why is this one? Why is making a fire mentioned exclusively in the Torah when it comes to the laws of Shabbat? That's the question we have to analyze for just a few minutes. Here are a couple of answers to that question. Number one, this particular malacha of making a fire is so integral to who we are as a people in terms of our Shabbat and weekday activities, it needed to be pulled out and mentioned. Why? Everything we do is based on fire. You cook food, that takes fire. You make items, it's been through a fire process. Clothing, everything we have pretty much has somehow been through some kind of fire process. We know that we have su'udot, meals that we eat on Shabbat. those meals got there because fire was involved. And therefore, the Torah, Hashem in the Torah, pulled out this one malacha because it's so important. And we're so used to doing it for 6 days a week that the Torah had to say, wait a minute, when Shabbat comes, stop, don't do this particular malacha. It had to remind us because we're eating hot food on Shabbat, we're warming up food, there's a lot going on when it comes to fire on Shabbat. And we do use fire on Shabbat. You cannot make a fire. This actually is one of the big differences between what we call the Sadducees and probably the Karaites as well. We're not too sure. When it came to this particular halacha, the Torah says, don't make a fire in your house on Shabbat. We understand that from the Gemara that you cannot make a fire. But if there was a fire that was already made Erev Shabbat, before Shabbat, you can use it on Shabbat to keep yourself warm, to warm up food that is fully cooked on Shabbat. That is the halacha. Let's say you do not have a Gemara. Let's say you are a person who's just reading these words and all you have are the 5 books of Moses. What would this pasuk tell you? Don't make a fire. That you have to sit in the dark eating cold food on Shabbat. Right? That would be the situation you'd end up living in. Imagine how miserable that is. Imagine you're a Shabbat eating cold food in the dark, freezing cold. How long do you think a Jew can last keeping Shabbat if those were the rules? Not very long. That's why the Sadducees have gone and the Karaites have gone. Well, I say the Karaites have gone. I received an email about, I don't know, a year ago or so from some guy in LA, of course, who told me that the Karaites have a community, they have a kehillah, we're a community over here. Most of them are actually not Jewish because they only follow patrilineal descent, by the way. So that's another situation completely. But for us, they've gone. Why? Because they remove themselves from the Torah by only following these words of the Torah and not following the oral tradition, the Torah Shabbat al-Peh. And therefore for us, they're persona non grata. They're gone. They've removed themselves. So why does the Torah pick on this particular malacha? Because you're so used to doing it, the Torah had to double down and say, be very careful not to make a fire. Use a fire, warm up your food, use a fire from Erev Shabbat, not a problem. Even have a non-Jewish person who doesn't keep Shabbat, obviously, make a fire for if you're old, young children, right, to keep the warm room warm, that's going to be okay. So that's one answer to our question. I want to give you another answer to this question of why the Torah specifically and only mentions that you're not allowed to make a fire in your house on Shabbat. Why would it be? What is a deeper understanding to why the Torah uniquely and specifically uses this pasuk, this verse, in order to bring out this one single idea? So there's a very famous idea mentioned by a number of the great Musar giants, those people who follow deeper understandings of self-improvement. They say, fire doesn't just mean a physical fire. What does fire also represent in the Torah? Fire represents chema, anger, the fire inside you. When the Torah says, don't make a fire on Shabbat, it is also saying, don't get angry on Shabbat. That is asur. We know that every mitzvah you do on Shabbat is worth 1,000 times more than the same mitzvah during the week. But did you know, lo aleinu, that one sin, one avera, says the Ben Ish Chai, is worth a lot more as well. If you're going to pick one day to be a religious Jew, because you can't handle 7 days a week, here, it's a lot, I'd pick Shabbat. If you want to pick one day not to speak Lashon Hara, I'd pick Shabbat. If you want to pick one day to bring yourself close to Hashem, or the rest of the week it's too much, I'm too busy, I got too much going on, I can't pray with a minyan, I can't do this, here. I'm not judging, I don't judge. But Shabbat stands out. The mitzvot of Shabbat stand out way, way more. So too when it comes to our midot, our character traits on Shabbat as well. The Mefarshim, the rabbis tell us, don't get angry on Shabbat. How do I know that? Lo tevaru esh. Don't make a fire inside yourself. And it's difficult because you're with your family and they're running around, kids are from school and people are busy and running and there's a lot going on. We have to specifically work on Shabbat uniquely not to get into fights on Shabbat itself. This is one of the reasons, and this is going to blow your minds, one of the reasons that we give brachot to our children as Shabbat enters. Right? We put our hands on the heads of our sons and our daughters. And by the way, you could do your grandson, you could do your granddaughter. Why do we do that? Why are we giving our kids blessings on Erev Shabbat, going into Shabbat, whether after you light the candle, some do before Kiddush, some do after Kiddush, right? In the Bet Knesset, in Sfari, many Sfari Kehilot, people line up, get a bracha from the rabbi as well. Right? I used to go to a Bet Knesset, Eretz Yisrael, the entire Kehillah would line up, right, for Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, give a bracha to every individual on their heads, men and women. He would give a bracha to every single person on Friday night in the Bet Knesset. What is the reason for this particular beautiful minhag that the Jewish people have? One of the answers, says the Ben Ish Chai again, is because you may have got into a fight with one of your children during the week. I know it's hard to believe. You may have shouted at your kids. You may have cursed your kids. You may have done a lot of things to make a machloket. You do not want that fight to carry on and that anger to carry on into Shabbat. So what do? Erev Shabbat, you make peace with your kids. You give them baracha. That means you're mavatel all the klalot, all the curses you may have given your kids during the week. And as Shabbat enters, he says, you make shalom with your children as well. And you put your hands on your kids' heads, because he says there are 15 joints in the hand, and those joints represent the 15 words in Birchat Kohanim, in the bracha that the Kohanim give the Kehillah every time they say Birchat Kohanim. And so that represents the bracha, right? You're making shalom. That bracha is all about bringing shalom to the world. And so by putting your hands onto your kids' heads, you're making shalom. So the fights you've had during the week, and those people who fought with their kids know what I'm talking about, they transfer and they stop as Shabbat comes forward. So Shabbat comes, you make shalom with your children. And you give them the bracha of the Kohanim, because that bracha is all about bringing shalom to the Jewish people as well. That, my friends, is the secret, one of the secrets, to why we give brachot to our kids on Friday night, to make shalom after fighting with them, so that we don't start Shabbat with a source of anger. I read something fascinating which blew my mind and does not make sense to me, but I'll tell you what it says. We have a special mitzvah, not only of keeping Shabbat, but also preparing for Shabbat. What is called hachana. Hachana. Now, I always thought, you got to cook Erev Shabbat because you can't cook on Shabbat. So, cooking on Erev Shabbat is not a mitzvah. It's just preparing for the mitzvah that is Shabbat. That's what I always thought, and I'll be honest with you, that's what I always taught. Why do we prepare an Erev Shabbat? So that we get to eat on Shabbat, as the very famous statement of Chazal, Mishto Terach Erev Shabbat, whoever prepares Erev Shabbat, Ochal b'Shabbat is going to be able to eat on Shabbat itself. So it's what some people will call a hechsher mitzvah. A hechsher mitzvah is not a mitzvah in of itself, but it helps you to do another mitzvah. For example, is there a mitzvah to build a sukkah? So there's no mitzvah to build a sukkah. It's a mitzvah to sit in a sukkah. If you don't build a sukkah and sit in someone else's sukkah, you fulfill the mitzvah. But there's something called a hechsher mitzvah, a preparation mitzvah. You build a sukkah, Erev Sukkot, you get to sit in on Sukkot. So you prepared the mitzvah by doing it before Shabbat. But if you didn't, no problem. That is not the same for Shabbat. The preparation you do on Erev Shabbat is its own mitzvah. I thought, okay, I'm buying. Maybe it's a mitzvah derabanan. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. And the rabbi's like, no. Shabbat is a Torah mitzvah. Therefore, even the preparation that we do on Erev Shabbat is a mitzvah d'oraita as well. Now, that is a wild statement. I don't know if you appreciate how wild that is. To say that the preparation for Shabbat, although Shabbat has not even arrived yet, is a mitzvah, is a big chidush. But to even say it is a Torah mitzvah is a chidush as well. But where does it start? When is Erev Shabbat? So for us, Erev Shabbat is, I don't know, Friday morning, when all the yeshivot, close early, when you're rushing around, preparing for Shabbat. My friends, there is no shiur over here. Motzei Shabbat to Erev Shabbat, from Saturday night to the following Shabbat, is all part of this mitzvah. It is possible to keep Shabbat on a Torah level every single day of the week. And that is why Hillel used to go around and he used to buy food in honor of Shabbat. He was actually doing a Torah mitzvah. On Monday morning, he would go and buy meat, lekavod Shabbat. And then Tuesday morning, he would find another better piece of meat. He would eat Monday's meat and say, I'll eat that now Tuesday. And this finer piece of meat is lekavod Shabbat. That is for the kavod of Shabbat. Here's a good trivia question for your kids on Shabbat. How do you keep Shabbat on a Tuesday morning? And the answer is by preparing for Shabbat. That is its own Torah mitzvah. Everything you do during the week in preparation of Shabbat is its own Torah mitzvah of Shabbat. That is how far-reaching this day is. That is bad. The other Chagim, the Jewish holidays, do not have that either. The preparation for Sukkot, the preparation for Shavuot or any other holiday is all well and good, but it kicks in on the holiday itself. Shabbat is unique. Even the Hachana, even the preparation for the day itself is the mitzvah. It is the thing. I have friends who host many, many, many people on Shabbat. Right? There are families, we all know, and they prepare a lot of food. They start Sunday morning. Their existence, says Shim Bar Yochai, is a world that is Kulo Shabbat. And that's what he says. Halavai, we could all keep Shabbat all week, but we can't. We're not at that level. Who can keep Shabbat all week? I've got to go to work, got to get a job, got to get in my car, right? I got stuff to do. I've got to make a fire, I've got to cook, I've got to clean. We can't keep Shabbat all week. So Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, I understand. You can't keep Shabbat. He was able to, but we cannot do that. I hear. So at least during the week, have Shabbat as part of your consciences. If you make it part of your conscience, then it's as though you're keeping Shabbat all week. How do you do that? By looking forward to Shabbat and doing some small action, some pula, in order to prepare for Shabbat. It could be something very, very small. It could be just preparing your suit. It could be just buying a little bit of food. It could be just thinking. As one of the zechirot, I'm going to think, my mind, now is Tuesday, but I'm looking forward to Shabbat. And by the way, the proof for this, and I'll finish with this, the proof for this is how we count the days of the week. In Hebrew, there are no names for the days of the week. Sunday is Yom Rishon. Monday is Yom Sheni. Day 1, day 2, Yom Shlishi, Ravi, Chamishi, Shishi. The only day that has a name is Shabbat. Why do we give numbers to the days of the week? Because really what you're saying is, this is day 1 in order to get to Shabbat. I'm counting up the days. Yom Rishon l'Shabbat. Yom Sheni l'Shabbat. La means towards. So every day of the week is actually there to build us up to reach Shabbat. So I know for most people, Shabbat comes, you're a complete shmata, you can't move, right? You lie down and goes, I'm out. I have students who say, Shabbat's coming, I get to sleep 12 hours. Or it's called in the yeshivot, a bagel. Right? I had a bagel this Shabbat. When you had a bagel this Shabbat, I slept a full 12 hours, I got through it. Shabbat is not meant to be that. There is a rest element. There's no doubt about it. We used to feel it going later. We get to rest a little bit. There's no doubt there is a ta'anug. There is an oneg that comes with relaxing and sleeping longer on Shabbat itself. But actually what you're meant to be doing is preparing to invest yourself into the Shabbat itself. Every mitzvah is worth 1,000 times more. Lo aleinu, every avera on Shabbat is worth 1,000 times more. And therefore, we are building ourselves up not to take a Shabbat off, but to actually have a Shabbat on. That, my friends, is the power and the secret of Shabbat. We'll stop over there. Have a great and wonderful day.